Here we go. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Voice of Reasons podcast, where I believe that the author of this creation is the God of the Bible. Tonight should be fun. What are we doing? Let me pull this opening scene here, just in case you didn't see it earlier. See if I can get rid of that guy. Question mark slash. This has been a controversial discussion for a long time in young Earth creation and in secular science. Dinosaurs, they lived 200 million years ago, right? 50 million years ago. Sure, we found soft tissues. Sure, fossils stick out of the ground. Sure, humans told the story of dragons and where did they come from. Sure, all myth, whatever. Well, you hear constantly that there's no evidence that humans and dinosaurs existed at the same time. There's no evidence. Or is there? I'm going to show a video tonight of a discovery from a paleontologist named Paul Sereno of the University of Chicago. And he has discovered in Africa, in a place in the Sahara Desert in Niger, dinosaurs sticking out of the ground, dinosaur fossils sticking out of the ground, and just around the corner, within 50 miles, human fossils, actually just slightly lower than the dinosaur fossils. And so what we're going to cover tonight is we're going to watch the video, and we're going to basically look at what the secular scientific narrative is. How come these dinosaurs and these humans are found in such close proximity in the same layer of strata when they're 190, 170 million years apart in when they died. We're also going to look at fossilization, how fossilization happens, and the geologic column. And if the accepted narrative of why they're found so close together and in the same layer is more believable than the idea that a global flood killed both the dinosaurs and the animals at the same time, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 years ago. Something in my eye. That's good. Just get my eye more and more red as the night goes on. Dangerous working in a studio. Something could fly in your eye, whatever it is. Maybe we go back to the video and watch the bug fly in it or whatever happened. Okay. That's the plan for tonight. This one, it's kind of... I don't have to go an hour and a half into this, which will be nice. It'll be like a 30-minute discussion, hopefully. 40 minutes, maybe. It's probably not one you can share with your family because it's very hard sell. Very hard sell. But really interesting nonetheless. And I'm surprised no one else has been talking about this, honestly. This to me, when I saw this video, I just was like, this should be on the front page of every Young Earth creation, website. But okay. Let's start with the video and then start to break down what this could possibly mean. So, here we go.
The Sahara Desert is home to some of the world's most isolated dinosaur bones. One recent huge find has sparked dreams of a world-class exhibition in Niger. Niger has long boasted fossil riches. Desert covers 2/3 of the country. There are countless bones poking through the ground, but most of the dinosaurs found here go to museums in Europe or North America for reasons practical and frustrating. Wealthier nations offer temperature-controlled rooms that prevent skeletons from crumbling. Niger lacks that storage. Its top museum is infested with termites. Leaders are striving to update that infrastructure and build a lasting home for Niger's ancient treasures. Local scientists teamed up with Paul Sereno, a University of Chicago paleontologist whose decades of expeditions in Niger have added 9 more species to the world's dinosaur record. With Niger's permission, Sereno has collected hundreds of fossils from the country over the years. They're stored at his lab in Chicago. He plans to catalog the bones and return them to Niger.
I've come to Niger because it's got the greatest slice of the Sahara, the greatest expanse, the greatest desert, the greatest hunting ground for dinosaurs and, in fact, ancient humans. It's like being on another planet.
Sereno's film crew shot this footage as his team cataloged hundreds of bones in Niger over a series of trips in 2018 and 2019. Digging up a dinosaur in Niger involves a lot of time, communication, and patience. Here, Sereno and his team find the backbone edges of a new long-necked dinosaur. They're peeking out from the rocky surface that entombed them some 170 million years ago.
Okay, That's basically the crux of the video. Or is it? There's more. You know that dinosaurs are found very deep in sediments in the geologic column, and also right at the top. Anyone who believes in 4.5 billion year old Earth and dinosaurs were here 200 million years ago has to think to themselves, why is the dinosaur sticking out of the ground? I used to talk about this in my live debates. I used to reference in Canada, this young man was like a 13-year-old boy or something, was walking in the mountains of Alberta, and he came across a dinosaur. He like kicked it, and he's like, that's a dinosaur. He was like into paleontology. This idea that they have this geologic column dated and they know where everything is and when everything was seems to fly in the face of dinosaurs peeking out of the soil, as she said there. 170 million years ago, that dinosaur died and is now at the surface level. Well, we're told that, sedimentation happens, layers and layers of strata keep being added on. Well, there's no layers of strata on top of that. It's crawling out of the ground. Now, imagine if in the same area, they don't just find dinosaurs at 170 million years peeking out of the soil. Imagine if they find humans. Well, humans, Homo sapien, has only been around for 190,000 years according to their mythos. So you get 190 million years ago, and then less than a million years ago, less than a third of a million years ago, here comes Homo sapien. So if they found humans, you go, well, maybe they were here 190,000 years ago. Or maybe they were here. Tell me, Paul Sereno, paleontologist.
As a paleontologist, I dug up dinosaurs, and you get these weird creatures. There's a sort of a detachment. The weirder the better. The more fearsome the better. And then I came across a human graveyard, and I realized this is my species. This is my story.
Here Sereno and his team excavate a teenager from the Green Sahara site called Gobero in Niger. People who existed here 5,000 to 10,000 years ago.
Yep. 170 million years, 5 to 10,000 years ago. 5 to 10,000 years ago. It's an interesting time frame. Sometimes if you're not sure if it's 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, you could find the average in the middle. Call it 7,500 years ago. Let's see, the flood happened 5,300 years ago, according to the Septuagint, which is the chronology, the time frame that I believe in. I'm not a Masoretic text fan. 7,500 years ago was creation. So 7,500 years ago was creation. They say 5 to 10,000 years ago, this person was buried in the desert sands in the Sahara. This area, this person is actually lower in the sediment than the dinosaurs that are peeking out of the soil. They're actually having to dig down just a little bit. Now, maybe the issue here is that, let me scroll over to this. Maybe the issue here is that, well, I've lost the thing I need. Where is it? Oh, fascia. I'm on the wrong one. That's why. Go to this, get rid of this, and get rid of this. Okay. Maybe the issue here is that it's very far away. Find. Maybe the dinosaur died 170 million years ago on the top of some mountain 2,000, miles away, and over time there was uplifting, and maybe this is way down in the valley and it's like 500 miles away or 1,000 miles away or something. Well, no. As luck would have it for us, this is the dig site, Niger 2022. Here's a dinosaur with a, Freemasonic looking dinosaur digging tool. Interesting. Let's see here. In our dig sites, we have Agadez over here. We have, Agadez is the Oasis station. My apologies. Dig site number 1 is called Gadafawa. I don't know how to say that. And it's right here. And then there's Erahazer, which is right over here. And Egaro over here. Okay, we have our own key to look at this. 100 miles. So from Irahazar to Gadaufa is less than 100 miles. Could be 70 miles, maybe 100, right at 100. To the Agadez Oasis Station, 20 miles, 30 miles, all the way to Agaro. Furthest distance you could, about 120 miles. These guys here, 40 miles. All within 100 miles, basically. You don't have the dinosaurs, again, on an uplift. It's one of the excuses. And then the humans in a valley. They're in the same basic latitude. The research I got, they're within 500 feet elevation of each other. How does this happen? You have to ask yourself how you could have a 170 million year old fossil and then just down the street, a day's walk if you wanted to, same layer of strata, 169 million years difference. 990,000, 993,000 years difference. Okay, well, maybe we have an answer here. Why are fossils found on the surface? Weathering and erosion from wind. That's not showing very well. Hold on. Let me share this a little better. Two different screens. There we go. Why are fossils found on the surface? Weathering and erosion from wind, rain, ice, heat, and rivers break rocks apart and wash the fragments away. David, who's apparently kind of a big deal in these parts, David says, it can take millions of years, but gradually fossils become exposed at the surface where we can find them. This is the Natural History Museum, and we will come back to this in a minute. It can take millions of years, but gradually fossils become exposed at the surface where we can find them. See, to me, this proposes a problem because the stratigraphic column, the geologic column, is getting deeper over time. This is why when you have a rock lower in the strata, it's older. This is what they say. I hope I have this guy here. Here we go. A geologic column depicts layers of different rocks, with the oldest at the bottom and the youngest at the top. Geologic columns are often called stratigraphic columns, as stratigraphy is the study of layer and rock and how they relate to geologic time. So you've got this picture here, right? Hopefully I can make it bigger. Look at this. Here we go. Here's the Proterozoic, I'm having I'm saying that, time, 541 million to 2.5 billion years ago, very old. Here's the Paleozoic time. This is 252 to 541 million years old. See, more time equals more sediment. So you get a dinosaur down here, in the Jurassic or whatever. This is just one version. It should be very old. And then if you get something that dies up here more towards the top, it should be much younger, much more recent. Right? This is how this would work. Older, lower, newer towards the top. Well, that is unless weathering and erosion causes the fossils to gradually become exposed at the surface. So this is the first shot I want to take. In my worldview, I have one commitment. The God of the Bible created this reality. He said he created it. Now we know where the universe came from. He said he created the earth. Now we know where the earth came from. He said he created life. Now we know where DNA comes from. He said there was a flood. And this is where the fossil record comes from, which we're going to cover here in a second. 5,000 to 7,000 years ago, 5,300 years ago. That's all I need. I have the account. This explains all of the problems. If you don't believe that, and you believe that the universe is 14 billion years old, then you have problems when the James Webb finds fully mature galaxies at what should be the beginning. When you believe the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and you believe that strata accumulates over deep time, and you have fossils at the top, you have a problem. Because it's the opposite of what you would predict. Dinosaurs should be very deep down there. The secular narrative, the one trying to explain this reality without the God of the Bible, needs to pick and choose when processes are static and when they are catastrophically affected when they change. So an example, radiometric dating. Well, we know that the process of radiometric decay has always been constant, which I think it largely is, and we know what the parent-to-daughter ratio is. How do we know that? Well, because the processes that are in operation have been basically doing this whole time. They exclude catastrophism. If a meteorite hits the Earth, or an asteroid, and it creates like some sort of superfluid state, you may have some sort of different parent-to-daughter ratio or some sort of acceleration of, the radiometric decay process. Who knows? But nope, it's steady because they need it to be. Then when it comes to the oceans getting saltier by an alarming rate in the last few years, 50 years it's gotten 2% saltier. Well, that's because there's a catastrophic process here. It's called climate change. See, it's not a uniformitarian process, because if we get 2% saltier every year and you go back in time, you can't possibly justify 4.5 billion years, right? We have the same situation here with the desertification. Okay, go back to my screen share. Check this out. When you read this Gobero deal, archaeology on the Green Sahara, That's funny. Green Sahara, right? The Sahara Desert. When you think of the Sahara Desert, do you think of green? No. You think of barren, dirty, or dusty desert, right? That's what you think of. Well, in 2000, while prospecting for dinosaurs, Paul Sereno discovered an exceptional archaeologic site called Gobero, preserving an unprecedented 5,000 years of habitation by peoples living in the latter part of the African humid period from 14,000 to 5,500 years ago. Human burials, artifacts, the mysteries. Most Saharan archaeologic sites record a single short-lived occupation lasting decades, perhaps a century or two, before changing conditions for the inhabitants to move. No other site approaches the longevity of Gobero, some 5,000 years. That duration, the resiliency in the middle of the Earth's greatest desert, ranks as one of its greatest mysteries. How and why? The duration also gives rise to a second mystery. At Gobero, there are hundreds of burials, far more than any other site of comparable age, as well as thousands of artifacts and rock fragments. How is it possible to find burials, sometimes in proximity, separated by thousands of years in that time, preserved as intact as the ancient day that they were closed? Let's see here. Answer to these mega mysteries has taken years of field and laboratory research by scholars of many disciplines to unravel. I love this. You've heard me say, all the king's horses and all the king's men. I was like, you gotta trust academia and scholarship. Like, well, what if you just looked at this was a once green desert, and you have this strange, fossil situation of 5,000 years, and dinosaurs right around the corner, and you said, well, it sounds like the flood happened. Nope. Of course not. Charles Lyell, I'm looking at you. The answer to these mega mysteries has taken years of field laboratory research by scholars of many disciplines to unravel. This is all the king's horses and all the king's men. This is what happens. You find a site like this, where the desert was a tropical land, and this people group of 5 to 10,000 years. I'm assuming they carbon dated them. I don't know. I can't find how they actually know this time frame. But how do you explain this? The story is unbelievable. I'm going to go back to the uniformitarianist thing. I haven't lost my way yet. Spectacular burials. Anyways, if we find this, they have this unbelievable story. Is it one of these guys? Why was it so green? Here we go. Geology holds part of the answer. A fault in the dinosaur age sandstone in the Gobero area forms a long, low ridge. Rainwater draining from the nearby Air Mountains pooled against the fault ridge to form a freshwater lake which stretched about 3 kilometers in diameter. Dunes extended into the middle of the lake and provided prime beachfront real estate. They come up with this really complicated explanation. Well, my complicated, not so complicated explanation is that according to the Bible, if you don't know this, I could pull it up. The pre-flood environment was very warm and very tropical. Adam and Eve were naked. They didn't have clothes. They didn't need clothes. It was warm. Bathwater warm all the time, I guess, somehow. Water's raining or like misting and lush vegetation everywhere. So we know why the desert was green, because before the flood, it was a tropical landscape, and then it changed. In fact, it wasn't just this area of the world that was green, right? What's their explanation? Well, there was a mountain, and the river came down the mountain, and it trapped by the dinosaur sandstone, and then blah, bingo bongo. Now you have a tropical environment. Well, Traces of ancient rainforest in Antarctica point to a warmer prehistoric world. Researchers have found evidence of rainforests near the South Pole 90 million years ago, suggesting the climate was exceptionally warm at the time. Okay, so we go in Antarctica. Greenland. While today Greenland is largely covered in ice, it's also a desert. In the time of the dinosaurs, the area was a lushly forested tropical zone. Spoiler, 2 Peter 3. So what all do they have to try to figure out so far? Dinosaurs and humans are in the same place. How did that happen? Well, where the dinosaurs were, the wind blew that. There was a mountain there that the wind blew away. It took 190 million years. Great. How did the humans get there? Why? We don't know how they're fossilized particularly, but just punt on that one for now. But what we do know is that they were in a green part of the Sahara when the desert was a tropical forest. And there was a river ran through it, whatever. Climate change, whatever thing they want to say. You got all these explanations. In ours, we would have literally predicted this. You read the Bible and you go, well, in the Sahara, I imagine that what would happen is you would find evidence of a tropical time before the flood where everything, plant, animal, dinosaur, human, they all died at the same time and were rapidly buried in mud. The book, it says the thing. And instead they have this wild story of all these, moving parts that have to happen. Moving parts that to me seem less believable than just a global flood. And then we're going to get into fossil creation here in a second. Now, I want to cover something that you may or may not think about. But when you have this desert, I've got my areas all kind of screwed up. I always go in different directions than I mean to. Have you ever thought of this? If the Sahara Desert was a green, beautiful, lush climate, and now it's an absolutely arid, unlivable, difficult to live in, parched desert landscape, how did this happen? Flood or random desertification? Look at this problem for them. A third of the world's land surface is threatened by desertification. Over 4 million, I go to the dictionary, over 4 million square kilometers of land is being degraded every year. 120,000 square miles are turned into actual desert. Desertification is a phenomenon that ranks among the greatest environmental challenges of our time. Now, I couldn't vet this because the numbers don't seem right, but 120,000 square kilometers turning into desert every year. And 509,600,000 square miles on the total Earth. You are going to have a very, very hard time figuring out why the whole world isn't a desert when the rate of desertification is happening at 120,000 square kilometers per year. I did that math. 120,000. Let's see if I can emulate this. I'm going to have to do it on here because I don't have a calculator pulled up. 120,000 kilometers turning into desert. Figure 5,300 years ago the flood was here. Go back 5,300 years ago. You get 636 million cubic kilometers or square kilometers of land. And what is our number here? 506 million on the Earth. We are so close to getting the right number of how much desert increases every year times 5,300 years. Meaning you start with tropical rainforest. Then 5,300 years ago you have a flood. Starts this new climate situation. Starts as a small speck, grows, and now we have the Sahara Desert. We can assume a steady rate. We can actually invoke uniformitarianism here. Flood happens, steady rate of desertification. Here we are today with a huge environmental catastrophe burgeoning that the whole world's going to turn into a desert. Another prediction we could have made. It's called entropy. Things get worse over time. Fertile soil, lush, vibrant life will become more disorganized over time, more disordered, and tend towards death and chaos. This is what we see. If you want to believe in the uniformitarianist model, then basically what you have to do is assume that desertification never happened, or that it went like this, maybe it went back up, back down, desert, back to forest, just always changing, right? So the question is, are you going to adhere to a uniformitarian viewpoint where steady processes over time? It's the whole point. You get the Grand Canyon by the Colorado River trickling down that canyon for 4 billion years or whatever. You can't have catastrophism there. What about desertification? Is it uniform or is it not uniform? Scientists, that's my question. Is desertification uniform? Is it a uniform process or is it not? Is the sediment layers, the strata layers being stripped away to reveal dinosaur bones? Is that a steady process, a uniform process, or a changing process? Which is it? You can't tell me that over time the layers get deeper and the deeper fossils should be lower, and then have them sticking out of the surface and say, well, that happens. And then have the desertification rate just going bonkers and say, well, yeah, but no, it changes. And then at the same time tell me that we know that the processes of radiometric decay have always been steady. I mean, you could just say whatever you want to, but don't call it science. That's my point. Here's the prediction you would want to make in your model, okay? You would want to say that the Earth is getting slightly more saline every year, slightly, 0.0000001%. You would want to say that deeper fossils are going to be lower, especially when there's no mountains, always going to be lower. The desertification that we have today is a slow process. It's like an acre every year, a couple acres every year. It's been doing it for 4 billion years, so it's just a tiny amount. You would predict something based on your model, which is a model. And then when you see this kind of data, you should probably say, maybe the model was wrong. How about that? You predict that the beginning of the universe is going to be a proto-galaxy forming. You find fully formed galaxies. Maybe our model was wrong. We found dinosaurs next to humans. Same time. Maybe they died at the same time. Find soft tissue and dinosaur bones. Maybe that happened at the same time. Maybe the soft tissue and dinosaur bones that we find and the humans buried in the same layer mean that the dinosaurs were here more recently than we thought. Well, it takes a long time for a dinosaur to turn into a chicken. Darwinian evolution takes a very long time because we don't see it at all. We haven't observed any of it. Even the Lenski experiments, any of these kind of ideas. We don't see it happening, but you need a lot of time for it. So, hey, if the dinosaurs were actually here more recently, the whole theory is in trouble. And if the theory is in trouble, you can't trust, because you found dinosaur bones at 190 million years, and you know this. You got your index fossils, you know this. Well, maybe those dinosaurs didn't get buried 190 million years ago. Maybe there was a rapid catastrophic event. And depending on the layers of sediment that were being put on it by these waves of tsunamis and whatever other catastrophic things happening, they're deeper because of more sediment, not because of more time. But nope. Just believe whatever you want to, I guess. Okay. The desertification thing is a major problem, and I'm going to have to make a video about it. This whole video is a major problem, and I actually did make a video about it. I recorded it today. I'm editing it. It's going to be released here on YouTube and on TikTok pretty soon. Okay, I'm going to back up a couple steps here. This is kind of an interesting study. How do you perpetuate this lie? How do you perpetuate this narrative? Well, you have to have the right actors in place, right? We know with the soft tissue and the dinosaur bones, you had Mary Schweitzer, young Earth creationist, being enlightened by Jack Horner, the inspiration for Jurassic Park. Jack Horner set her straight. Now she decries young Earth creation. She runs around saying, don't use my work for young Earth creation. Soft tissue and dinosaur proves evolution. Bleh. Jack Horner propped up, greatest scientist ever, the reason we have Jurassic Park. That's how they got through the whole soft tissue thing. She proves cross-linking, yada, yada, bingo, bongo, done. Well, in this case, we have another paleontologist superstar. Apparently, scientists are the coolest guys. Did you know that when you were growing up and going to school? That scientists are the most important people on Earth? They're rock stars, basically. Paul Sereno, the longtime University of Chicago professor and so-called Indiana Jones of paleontology. They call Jack Horner Indiana Jones, too. Both of them. They're both Indiana Jones. Why? Because they're rebel cowboys defending the narrative. Taking data, making any data fit the narrative at all costs. A finder of lost civilizations and a discoverer of new dinosaurs. One of the most beautiful people in the world. Sereno, People Magazine, 1997. Not to mention, one of the 100 best people in the world. That's a big deal. He's not just the most beautiful person in the world, he's the best person in the world. He's Paul Sereno, superstar Indiana Jones paleontologist. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Hunger Games. I was having my wife look into it. She's a fan of the series. Like, I remember there's like snow and there's like that like level of like celebrities that get to grandstand with him on his podium. I imagine it's like the guy, the scientist, and the whatever. Like Paul Sereno is that guy. I'm wondering if Ross from Friends isn't modeled after him. I was going to do Ross's blasting Phoebe for believing in evolution video, but I thought that maybe that would be like censored or whatever. That's interesting. I kind of want to show that. Anyways, you got the superstar guy Sereno. Goes into Niger, finds these things. He says, no problem. We're going to figure this out. All the king's horses and all the king's men get together and they just come up with a story. Really interesting, though, that the AP or the media, you get Esquire magazine and People magazine. And there was another thing that he was voted. Top 100 top people to watch in the next century or something. Bet you he's going to make a really big discovery soon. Keep your eye on Paul Sereno. Unbelievable they would do this. Let's see here. There's the archaeology of the Green Sahara. There's this area they found. There's this guy. This guy. This is going to be kind of a fun part. Again, I knew this would be kind of a short one tonight. Hopefully we can wrap this up in the next 10-ish minutes, but I'm going to do a recap of what they believe and what we believe and let you decide which one makes more sense. Where are they found at the surface? We covered this earlier. Do you guys remember this how do dinosaur fossils form video? Very important, and I'm going to show this to you now. This is from the article where the David guy says it takes millions of years, but gradually fossils become exposed to the surface where we can find them. This video is one of the most ridiculous pieces of scientific propaganda I've ever seen, and I've ever shared on this show. I go deeper into this in one of the top, the top 5 videos, the top 5 reasons that the Earth is young, or the global flood video. I forget which one, but I covered this a little bit. But as we think about this discovery of these dinosaurs peeking out of the surface, and as we think about wind blowing them, and all of the things necessary to happen for them to preserve their narrative, I want us to watch this video and marvel at the level of, I almost want to say incompetence. That seems like a strong word, but the unbelievability, the absolute unbelievability of this story that they tell you have to believe. First off, it's a natural history museum. Well, because why? Science is natural. The world's natural. So there's nothing supernatural, nothing immaterial, nothing ideal. It's just all material. It's all science. It's just, there's nothing to see here. It's fact. It's a natural situation. Watch what they have to do to defend this narrative about how these dinosaurs get fossilized. It's going to take us a couple minutes. Then we should be able to bring it into a wrap and let you off the hook for tonight. Okay.
Millions of years ago, this dinosaur was going about his normal daily life.
Really?
But his day went from good to bad. Really bad.
Okay.
After he died...
Step 1 of how dinosaur fossils are formed. The dinosaur was food poisoned, basically. Why do they show this? Because if he were to die, they don't really die of heart attacks or cancer, these kind of things. They can live till old age, and that can happen, but a lot of times they die, just like if you have chickens or whatever, they die in battle, basically. It's a fight, dog eat dog, dinosaur eat dinosaur world. Why did they show you him dying of food poisoning, of IBS? Because he has to die in a fully intact form, okay? Because they find him fully intact. They find them fully articulated. So the dinosaur had to die of basically food poisoning. So that's a good start.
Other dinosaurs ate him. and the rest of his skin and muscles rotted away, leaving just his bones.
Okay, next step, dinosaurs, scavengers came and ate him, ate the dinosaur. This is necessary. You have to get rid of all the proteins, all the tendons, all these things. And they managed to scavenge him without disarticulating him. You know, they didn't pull his arms off. You ever seen a hyena? You ever seen actual scavengers? They shred it. They rip it apart. But you don't find that, because you don't find a bone here and a bone there. You find them fully articulated. So the dinosaurs come and munch on him very politely. They want to be very polite to the future paleontologists. They got to find a fully intact dinosaur. Okay? Food poisoning. They eat only the soft tissues and leave the bones intact. What's next?
These were quickly buried by mud.
I love my job. If you're someone who, I don't know, goes on YouTube or TikTok or has to talk to their neighbors and tell them that you think the earth might be young and the flood might have happened, and they laugh you out of the room, just remember this. Just let this be your, spirit animal. This story from the Natural History Museum. The ultimate, like the penultimate Natural History Museum. Food poisoning, scavenged, bones left in place. And then the mud quickly covered it. You know why quickly? Because it needs to be in an anaerobic position. It can't have oxygen and bacteria in these things. It has to be basically vacuum sealed. Is what the mud does. There's no oxygen in it, and so oxidization doesn't happen, and the process of breaking this down into nothingness, because God created organisms to basically be reconstituted back into soil, to reintroduce nutrients into the soil. You get the calciums, the magnesiums, and the carbon. All these things go back into the soil. Brilliant. If everything that ever died just died and sat there, we'd be in a terrible place. But nope. God built all these little Roombas, all these little things. They eat it up. I mean, the bone-eating worms and fungus and stuff, they eat it all up. Gone. Healthy soil. Good system. Well, that doesn't create fossils when nothing exists. You need it fully articulated and to exist. So, died of natural causes. Scavenged politely. And then the mud came. You know why else they tell this story about the mud? Getting it when it died. Because animals have unbelievable instinct. I would say programming. It reminds me of like the animals in Minecraft. They just do the thing that they do. We always wondered what instinct was. It's like programming, I think. Anyways, they're very in tune with nature. When there's a catastrophic event coming, they leave. We had that hurricane up here in northern Maine. It hit the coast a lot harder. Hurricane Lee a few months ago. And the birds were flying in, and the fishermen were going, we've never seen this kind of birds. They're just flying in here. What is this? They're like, they get away. They know instinctively to get away from catastrophe. So you're not going to have a dinosaur munching, eating its grass. It's like, well, that river looks like it's getting high. This is the dinosaur talking. No need to worry. I'm sure it's just a ebb. Or a flow, I guess. It'll ebb. I'm good. It's going up higher. Well, now the thing I'm eating is gone, but this too shall pass, the dinosaur says. Oh no! I'm totally covered in mud. It would never happen. They would get away from the water. They always get away from the water. So you have to tell a story that they die like this, and then they're just sitting there dead. But quickly, before the worm-eating funguses or the bone-eating worms and fungus and stuff get it, has to be covered. So now comes the flood. So it had to be living and dying near the water in the first place, and then it overtopped, whatever. So that's we're in pretty far, and we're making pretty good progress. It gets much worse. Of course. See, I need to rewind that because I wasn't sharing it. Every time they say million years, I need to have the Pee Wee Playhouse like, million years, you said the magic word. They have to constantly reinforce that, right? Definitely millions of years. It wasn't thousands of years. It's just definitely millions. It didn't happen rapidly. No way. It didn't happen in 40 days or a year. No, millions of years. Okay. Oh wait, let's watch that. Let's actually watch the
Over millions of years, these were quickly buried by mud.
Mudstorm.
Over millions of years, more layers landed on top. Mud, sand, and even volcanic ash.
Right, see how this actually works? The dinosaur gets lower. Or the land gets higher, whatever. The dinosaur is at the bottom.
This added up to a lot of weight on top of the skeleton.
145,
Some parts
150
got
million
crushed.
years ago. See,
The layers of mud, sand, and
this is important because that's how long ago the dinosaurs were here, right? There's your time frame. Anchor 1, 100 million. Anchor 2, 45. Anchor 3, 5. That's how this happens.
ash turned into hard, sedimentary rocks. While this was happening,
There he is down there.
water seeped into the bones. It left behind minerals, turning the bones to stone and creating a fossil.
Oh, by the way,
Earth changed a lot.
the bones were now stone, not organic material, which is why there shouldn't be soft tissues in them.
Over millions of years.
Millions of years.
Rocks that were once deep underground rose to the surface.
Right.
A process called uplift.
Right. So, do you see this mountain? Right out of the ground. Brought the dinosaur to the top like an elevator. Except for in the Sahara Desert where there is no mountain. And the dinosaur is also at the top. Maybe the Earth spit it back up. Get this out of here. Like a splinter. Flip. You know how splinters come out of your body? Maybe that's what happened. Yeah, that's probably a better story.
Very slowly, wind, water, and ice wore away the rock. Eventually, bits of the fossil skeleton were exposed and became visible on the surface. Fossils are constantly getting eroded out of rock. Most are lost. But if we're lucky, someone will find one. Nearly
This is so
all of the
terrible.
fossils we find, around 99%, are from marine animals,
Right.
such as shellfish and sharks. And from good,
Interesting that 99% are from that were in water already. It's almost like that was easier to fossilize when they were already in the water. Maybe there's a better
nearly
story. though.
all of the fossils we find, around 99%, are from marine animals, such as shellfish and sharks. This is because they lived in the sea, where sand or mud could bury their remains quickly after they died. But dinosaurs live on land, so how do they get buried so quickly?
That is a great question, Natural History Museum. I'm so glad you're asking. I don't know what happened to my camera. Now we're in dark mode. Thank you for asking, Natural History Museum. It makes a lot of sense that the fish would die and they would get covered. Although they also wouldn't get covered because they would also be scavenged. I covered this in one of my other videos. And then what, you have like mud showing up in the water. That doesn't make any sense either, but whatever. Hey, these guys are on the land. How does this happen? I can't. They're going to tell us.
Most dinosaur fossils we find belong to animals that were living near to a lake or a river. They died, and a short while later the area flooded, covering their remains in mud and silt.
See, it's easy. Bingo bongo. That's why we say bingo bongo. They died. They lived near a lake or river. They died by the lake or river, and then they were recovered rapidly. So we have global fossils all over the earth, everywhere, every continent, top of mountains, in the middle of the desert. You got whales in the middle of the desert. You got dinosaurs everywhere. How did this happen? Well, everybody lived by a lake. A lot of lakes, a lot of rivers. There's no lake or no river at certain places where you find them, but there was one because science. They all died of natural causes, food poisoning, and then they were scavenged and buried rapidly. Is that, like, you wanted to ask? I just covered this a minute ago in the video. The mud came. It's mud. Mud came, and the mud got them. Very simple.
Occasionally, something more dramatic happened. In one example, two dinosaurs, Protoceratops and Velociraptor, were fighting in the desert. They were mid-battle when, suddenly, a sand dune collapsed on top of them.
When your story sucks, this is what it looks like. Have you ever done like a pretend with like a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old? That sounded bad. Have you ever done like I guess when you were younger, like, hey, let's do pretend, or like you have like I was thinking of my son when I said that, like, Dad, we'll do this thing, and then imagine this, and then this happened, and this happened. You're like listening to it, you're like, Yeah, it's a great story. Makes total sense. It's like it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. This is that story. It's like a fever dream. Their story is a fever dream that you can't question. Don't you question my fever dream. It's just ridiculous pretend. It's ridiculous imagination. Imagination. Okay. The sand dune fell on their head. They're fighting. Put up your dinosaur dukes. And then a sand dune collapsed on them. Perfect. Makes perfect sense.
Their fossils show them frozen in their fighting poses.
Right. Does that make sense as to why they said that the sand dune had to fall on their head? Because they were fighting. Yeah, they were fighting, and then this happened, which doesn't really fit the whole food poisoning, falling over dead, being scavenged narrative, and then the lake overtopping. So in this case, science, they were fighting. It wasn't a huge wave of mud that they couldn't get away from. No, it was a sand dune collapse.
In another tragic example, the feathered dinosaur Sitipati was sitting on its nest of eggs
And potty.
when a sandstorm blew in and covered it.
Yep.
Fossils like
It's a fever dream. This is it. The secular scientific narrative is a fever dream. I can't leave these eggs. Oop, it's getting deeper. Can't leave the eggs. I gotta stay here for the tribe. No, I'm in the sand. Fever dream.
this, from animals that were alive when they were buried, are really rare.
Really rare.
It's not just bones that turn.
It's really rare. Okay, guys? Sure, it happens, but it's not a problem. It all works. The universe created itself. The universe created the Earth. The Earth created the magnetic field. Water was delivered on comets. Life created itself. Fever dream. And yeah, of course we find dinosaurs at ground level. Why wouldn't we? Sure, they should be under 100 billion million years of dirt that came from wherever. So of course where it came from. We see them at the surface. It's fine. There's humans around the corner, same level. It's also fine. There was a lake. Once upon a time, far, far away, there was a lake, and it made the desert green. They all died together. And then it flooded. Then that one area rained, and then the wind in the desert and stripped away the mountain. And it's, it's fine. And the desertification is happening. But sometimes it happens fast, sometimes it happens slow. It doesn't matter. They just make up the rules. So what do you guys think is more believable? Do you think it's more believable that the fever dream, that trying to really imagine this, the dinosaur was in an area 170 million years ago, and it died of natural causes, food poisoning, and then a river overtopped, encased it in mud so it could become fossilized, and then mountains of geologic column ended up on top of it. I don't know, 200 feet deep, 100 feet deep, whatever. Then wind just blew it all out. Rain, desert rain, and wind, and then bingo bongo, they're sticking out of the ground. Then around the corner, the humans, same thing, fossilized, but this was only 5,000 years ago this time. But it was also a lake in the desert that overtopped on them. But in their area, there wasn't sedimentation. There wasn't time for it. There you go, there's that answer. There wasn't time for it to go on there. So you just find them in the same layer. Yeah, it was green. Why wouldn't it be green? There was a lake and a mountain. And then the climate changed. But we don't know why the climate changed, but it's fine. Which is fewer commitments, honestly. Because the thing about this is exactly what we would have predicted. Hey, I predict that when we look down, we're going to find fossils in all different layers based on depending on how much tsunamis, how many lakes, how many waves of mud, how catastrophic the plate subduction was. We don't know. They could be very deep. I had a guy message on TikTok just now when I was on. He said that he drills in the oil field and they find fossils like 16,000 feet deep or something, 12,000 feet deep, whatever. You find them all over because the world's like crazy. The pre-flood world was tropical, which is why Antarctica and Greenland were tropical at one point. The Sahara Desert was tropical. This catastrophic event caused obviously a different climate. We have canopy theory is interesting in there. But whatever this catastrophic event was, started desertification, which is why the whole world isn't a desert, but it's rapidly going in that direction. The salinification of the oceans is increasing relative to that time. From that time till now, the electromagnetic field is decreasing. I mean, it all fits the biblical prediction of basically a 7,500-year-old Earth, and 5,000 years ago, 5,300 years ago, you had a flood. This is why we get the fossils. This is why they're all in the same layer. This is why the desert's changing. All these things. I just want you to think about that when you're debating an atheist or somebody who's really into the secular model. We need to do this. We need to just figure out their commitments. This is what you need to happen to believe this story. When I do my debates and when I do my apologetic, I say that my belief system is more logical, because all I need is that the God that created this reality documented in a book that has been historically validated dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and he told the narrative of the true history of this reality. But we have a group of people super interested and invested in telling a version of the story that's antithetical to that. And in order to preserve their narrative, they have to invoke fever dreams. Yes, the scientific narrative that they teach you as fact, that you can't question, is a fever dream. Yeah, I'm going to end it on that. What do you want to believe in? The Bible or a fever dream? You choose. You have free will. Thanks for watching. End transmission.